Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Leap podcast, your podcast for easy English conversation and real daily life talk.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So Jake, I have to admit something a little uncomfortable before we start.
Okay, I'm listening.
Last night, I was scrolling through social media just before bed, which is already a bad habit on its own.
Oh, we've talked about that one before, actually.
Right, we have. But anyway, I saw a post from an old classmate. New house, new car, a big trip to some beautiful place, and this whole happy, perfect-looking life.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Yes, and instead of feeling happy for her, I spent almost 20 minutes feeling strangely bad about my own life, comparing my small apartment to her big house, my quiet weekend to her exciting trip.
That's such a relatable and honestly quite painful experience. I think almost everyone listening right now has done exactly this at some point.
Exactly, and that's a perfect way into today's topic. Today, we're talking about comparison, why we do it, why it hurts us, and more importantly, how to stop or at least do it much less.
This is such an important topic because comparison is honestly one of the sneakiest sources of unhappiness in modern life, especially with social media constantly showing us other people's highlight moments.
Right, and we'll also connect this to English learning because comparison is a huge, sneaky reason a lot of people feel discouraged and quit learning a language.
So if you've ever felt behind compared to someone else, whether in life, career, appearance, or even English level, this episode is really for you.
Before we start, quick reminder, if you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who might need to hear this today.
And tell us in the comments, have you ever compared yourself to someone and felt worse afterward? You're definitely not alone, and writing about it is also great English practice.
Okay, let's get into it.
So Anna, why do you think humans compare themselves to others so naturally? It seems like such a common, almost automatic behavior.
Actually, comparison is a very old, very natural human instinct. For thousands of years, comparing ourselves to others in our community helped us understand where we stood socially and even helped with survival.
Oh, interesting. So it's not some modern flaw, it's actually a really old survival tool.
Exactly. In small tribes and communities, knowing your position, who was stronger, who had more resources, who was more skilled, actually mattered for safety and cooperation.
So our brains developed this automatic habit of comparing because at some point in history it was genuinely useful information.
Right. But here's the problem. In the past, we only compared ourselves to a small group of people, maybe a few dozen people in our village or community.
And now?
Now, because of social media, we're comparing ourselves to literally thousands, sometimes millions of people, including celebrities, influencers, and even strangers halfway across the world.
Oh, that's such an important point. Our brain still uses this old comparison instinct, but now it has access to an unbelievably huge, unrealistic amount of comparison material.
Exactly. Our ancient brain simply wasn't built to handle comparing itself to millions of curated, carefully chosen highlight moments every single day.
Right, curated is such an important word here. Most of what we see on social media isn't really someone's full, real life. It's a carefully selected, edited version of their best moments.
Exactly. Nobody posts a photo of themselves stressed, tired, arguing with a family member, or feeling insecure. We mostly see the good parts, the achievements, the beautiful trips, the happy smiles.
So really, we're comparing our full, real, complicated life, including our bad days, our stress, our doubts, to someone else's highlight reel, their best 5%.
That comparison was never fair to begin with, but our brain doesn't automatically know that. It just sees the difference and reacts emotionally. Okay, Jake, tell us about a time comparison really affected you.
Oh, I have a good one. A few years ago, I had a close friend from university who became really successful very quickly in his career. Promotions, a great salary, all while I felt like I was moving much more slowly in my own path.
That sounds like it would be hard to watch, especially from someone close to you.
It really was. Every time we talked, or every time I saw an update about his career, I felt this heavy, uncomfortable feeling. Not exactly jealousy, but something close to it, mixed with a lot of self-doubt.
Did it affect how you felt about your own work?
Definitely. I started feeling like my own progress, which honestly was pretty solid and steady, wasn't good enough, simply because it looked slower next to his.
That's such a common trap, measuring your own progress against someone else's timeline instead of your own.
Exactly. And looking back, I realize I completely ignored the fact that we had different jobs, different industries, different starting points, and honestly, different personal circumstances too.
Right. Comparison often ignores all that important context. It just looks at the surface result and creates a feeling of behind or not enough.
Precisely. And the strange thing is, this comparison didn't motivate me in a healthy way. It just made me feel worse and honestly a little less motivated, not more.
That's really interesting because a lot of people think comparison pushes them to work harder.
Sometimes, maybe, in small doses, but in my experience, this kind of constant, heavy comparison mostly just drained my energy and confidence rather than fueling healthy ambition. Okay, Anna, your turn now.
Mine is connected to something a little different, comparing my own English learning journey to other people's.
Oh, that's such a relevant one for this podcast.
Right. So years ago, when I was learning a second language myself, I joined an online group of learners, and there was one person in that group who seemed to progress incredibly fast, speaking confidently within just a few months.
And how did that affect you?
Honestly, it made me feel really discouraged. I compared my slow, sometimes clumsy progress to theirs fast, confident progress, and I started to feel like maybe I just wasn't good at learning languages.
That's such a painful and honestly very common feeling for language learners.
Right, and I actually considered quitting a few times because of that comparison. It wasn't the language itself that discouraged me, it was constantly comparing my journey to someone else's.
So what eventually changed?
A teacher I had at the time told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "You don't know their full story. Maybe they had years of exposure to a related language already, or more free time, or a completely different learning style than you."
That's such an important reminder. We usually only see someone's current result, not their unique background, resources, or starting point.
Exactly. And once I stopped comparing my journey to theirs and just focused on my own slow, steady progress, I actually started enjoying learning again. And ironically, I made faster, more consistent progress too.
That's such a powerful lesson because it shows how much mental energy comparison can quietly steal away from actual progress. Let's talk a little about why comparison affects our mood and confidence so strongly.
Right. So psychologically, there's something called social comparison theory. It basically says humans naturally evaluate themselves by comparing to others, especially when we're unsure how we're doing.
So when we don't have a clear internal sense of how well we're doing, we look outward at other people to measure ourselves.
Exactly. And there are actually two types of comparison here. Upward comparison, comparing yourself to someone who seems better off, and downward comparison, comparing yourself to someone who seems worse off.
Oh, interesting. So downward comparison would be the opposite, right? Feeling better about yourself because someone else seems to be struggling more?
Exactly. And while downward comparison can sometimes give a short boost of feeling better, it's not a healthy long-term strategy either, because it depends on other people's struggles to feel good about yourself.
Right. That doesn't sound like a stable, healthy source of confidence at all.
Exactly. And upward comparison, which is what most of us do constantly on social media, comparing ourselves to people who seem more successful, more attractive, or more accomplished, tends to lower our mood and self-esteem.
So basically, both directions of comparison have real problems. Upward comparison hurts our confidence, and downward comparison isn't a healthy foundation either.
Right, and this connects back to what we talked about with social media specifically. We're constantly surrounded by upward comparison material, other people's best moments, which quietly and repeatedly chips away at our own sense of satisfaction.
Here's something I think is really important to highlight. When we compare ourselves to others, we're almost always comparing completely different journeys as if they were the same race.
Right, like your friend's career story. Different starting points, different circumstances, different opportunities, different challenges. None of that is visible in a simple comparison.
Exactly. Imagine two people running a race, but one started 10 kilometers ahead on a flat, smooth road, while the other started at the very beginning on a rocky uphill path.
Comparing their current position without considering that context wouldn't be fair at all.
Right, but that's essentially what we do every single day when we compare our current life, our current English level, our current career to someone else's current situation without knowing their full journey.
And there's another problem too. We usually compare our internal experience, our doubts, our struggles, our behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's external result, their finished achievement, their polished social media post.
Oh, that's such an important distinction. We're comparing our messy, complicated inside to their neat, edited outside.
Exactly, and that comparison will almost always feel unfair because we have full access to our own struggles, but we usually only see other people's highlight moments.
Let's go through a few common areas where comparison tends to show up strongly.
Comparison in career and success. This is a big one, comparing job titles, salaries, promotions, or business success to friends, classmates, or even strangers online.
Right, like my story earlier, it's so easy to feel behind even when your own progress is genuinely solid.
And this often gets worse around milestones, like reunions, or even just scrolling a professional networking site and seeing everyone's job updates all at once.
Right, seeing 5 different promotion announcements in 1 week can create a strange, sudden feeling of being left behind, even if nothing about your own actual situation has changed.
Comparison in appearance. Another huge area, especially with social media, is comparing our appearance, weight, style, or overall look to filtered, carefully posed photos online.
Right, and it's worth remembering that a lot of those photos involve filters, good lighting, professional editing, or simply choosing the one best photo out of 50 attempts.
It's honestly wild to think about. Someone might take 50 photos, choose the single best one, edit it further, and post it, while we compare our regular, unedited daily reflection to that one perfect selected image.
That's such an unfair comparison when you really break it down like that.
Comparison in relationships. People also compare their romantic relationships, family, to seemingly perfect couples or families online without seeing the real arguments, struggles, or hard moments behind those pictures.
Right, nobody posts photos of a difficult argument or a hard day in their relationship, so what we see online is a very incomplete, curated picture.
I think this is especially tricky because relationships are so private by nature. We genuinely have no idea what's really happening behind closed doors, no matter how happy a couple looks in their posted photos.
Comparison in parenting.
For parents, this shows up constantly too, comparing their child's development, behavior, or achievements to other children, or comparing their own parenting style to seemingly perfect influencer parents online.
That sounds like such a heavy, unfair pressure to carry, especially since every child and every family situation is so different.
Right. Every child develops at their own pace, and every family has its own unique circumstances, resources, and challenges, none of which are visible in a short video or a cute photo online.
Comparison in language learning.
And of course, connected to this podcast, comparing your English progress to other learners, especially ones who seem to be progressing faster or speaking more fluently.
Right, exactly like my earlier point about your online learner group story. Comparing your speaking confidence, your vocabulary size, or your grammar accuracy to someone else's current level without knowing their full background.
Let's clear up a couple of myths about comparison before moving on.
Myth 1. If I stop comparing myself to others, I'll lose my motivation to improve. A lot of people worry that comparison is what pushes them forward.
But as we'll talk about later, healthy inspiration and unhealthy comparison are actually two very different things. You can absolutely stay motivated without the constant draining comparison.
Right. Motivation rooted in your own goals and values tends to be much more sustainable than motivation rooted in anxiety about falling behind someone else.
Myth 2. Everyone else really does have it easier than me. This feeling is incredibly common, but it's almost always based on incomplete information, since we only see other people's external results, not their internal struggles.
Right. I'm sure my successful friend from the story earlier had his own private struggles and doubts too, things I simply never saw from the outside.
Myth 3. Comparison is just harmless. Everyone does it, so it's not really a big problem. While comparison is extremely common, research consistently links heavy social comparison, especially through social media, to lower mood, higher anxiety, and reduced life satisfaction.
Right. Common doesn't necessarily mean harmless. It's worth taking seriously, even though it's such a normal, widespread habit.
This reminds me of a message we received from a listener a while back.
Oh, tell us.
She said she used to follow a lot of fitness accounts online, hoping to feel inspired to exercise more. But instead, she found herself feeling worse and worse about her own body, comparing herself constantly to those carefully posed, professionally lit photos.
That's such a common experience, unfortunately.
Right. And she told us she eventually realized the accounts weren't motivating her at all. They were just quietly making her feel inadequate every single day.
So what did she do?
She unfollowed most of those accounts and instead started following a few accounts that focused on realistic, everyday movement without the heavy filters and comparison pressure.
And how did that change things for her?
She said within a few weeks, she actually felt more motivated to exercise, not less, because now it felt like something she was doing for herself, not something she was constantly failing to measure up to.
That's such a great concrete example of strategy 4, limiting exposure to comparison triggers. Sometimes the healthiest thing isn't more willpower, it's simply changing what you're regularly exposed to.
Exactly. And it shows that the goal isn't avoiding all inspiration, it's specifically avoiding the kind that consistently leaves you feeling worse instead of better.
Okay, let's get practical now. Let's share strategies that can genuinely help reduce harmful comparison.
Strategy 1. Notice when you're comparing.
The first strategy is simply noticing when comparison is happening. A lot of comparison happens automatically, almost unconsciously, especially while scrolling social media.
Right. Just pausing and thinking, oh, I'm comparing myself right now, is actually a powerful first step because it brings something automatic into conscious awareness.
Once you notice it, you can consciously choose how to respond instead of just absorbing the negative feeling without questioning it.
I actually started doing this myself, a small mental check-in whenever I catch that familiar, heavy feeling while scrolling. Just labeling it, this is comparison, somehow makes it feel less powerful.
That makes sense. It's similar to how naming an emotion in general often reduces its intensity rather than just being swept along by it unconsciously.
Strategy 2. Remember that what you're seeing, especially on social media, is almost always a carefully chosen highlight, not someone's full, real life.
Right. Behind that beautiful vacation photo might be financial stress, relationship problems, or personal struggles that simply aren't shown.
This doesn't mean assuming everyone secretly has a terrible life. That's not really the point either. It just means remembering that a single photo or post never tells the full story.
I sometimes literally say this to myself quietly, highlight reel, not the whole story, almost like a small reminder phrase whenever I catch myself comparing.
That's such a simple, practical trick, a short phrase you can repeat to yourself in the moment, rather than a complicated process to remember.
Strategy 3. Compare yourself to your past self instead.
Right, this is such a healthier shift, because instead of comparing yourself to other people, compare yourself to where you were last month, last year, or 5 years ago.
Right, this shift is such a healthier form of comparison because it actually reflects your own real growth on your own real timeline with your own real circumstances.
For English learners specifically, this is huge. Instead of comparing your English to a native speaker or to someone who's been learning for years, compare your English today to your English 6 months ago.
Exactly. That comparison will almost always show real, meaningful progress, which is much more motivating than an unfair comparison to someone else's completely different journey.
And honestly, this shift applies well beyond English too. Career, fitness, relationships, almost any area of life benefits from measuring your own timeline instead of someone else's. Strategy 4. Limit exposure to heavy comparison triggers.
Sometimes the healthiest choice is simply reducing exposure to whatever consistently triggers unhealthy comparison for you, whether that's certain social media accounts, certain apps, or even certain conversations.
Right. This isn't about avoiding life or hiding from reality. It's about being thoughtful about what you regularly expose your mind to, especially if it consistently leaves you feeling worse.
I actually unfollowed a few accounts myself, specifically ones that consistently triggered that heavy comparison feeling. And honestly, I noticed a real difference in my mood afterward.
It's a small, simple action, but it really does change what your brain is regularly absorbing throughout the day.
Strategy 5. Practice gratitude for your own journey.
Practicing gratitude, even briefly, for your own specific life, your own progress, your own path, can help balance out the pull toward comparison.
Right, this connects back to our small habits episode too. A small daily gratitude habit can genuinely shift your overall perspective over time.
Even just noticing one small thing you're proud of or grateful for in your own current situation can quietly counterbalance the constant pull toward comparing yourself to others.
Strategy 6. Remind yourself that everyone's journey involves completely different starting points, resources, timelines, and challenges.
Right. A simple mental phrase like, "Their journey isn't my journey," can be a small but powerful reminder in the moment.
Exactly. It doesn't erase the comparison instinct completely, but it gently interrupts the automatic negative reaction that usually follows. Let's spend a little more time connecting this directly to English learning, since it's such a common struggle for our listeners.
Right. So many learners feel discouraged because they compare their speaking, their accent, or their vocabulary to someone else, whether that's a classmate, an online personality, or even just an idealized version of fluent.
And this comparison often leads to something really unfortunate. People avoid speaking altogether because they feel embarrassed comparing themselves to more advanced speakers.
Right, but here's an important truth. Every single fluent speaker you admire today was once a complete beginner, making plenty of mistakes, feeling exactly as unsure as you might feel right now.
That's such an important reminder. Comparing your beginning to someone else's middle or someone else's end result will almost always feel unfair and discouraging.
Exactly. And just like strategy 3 we mentioned earlier, comparing your English today to your English a few months ago is a much healthier, much more motivating measurement.
Right. And honestly, that's really the whole spirit of this podcast. Slow, steady, consistent progress measured against your own journey, not someone else's completely different path.
We got a thoughtful question from a listener. Isn't a little comparison sometimes helpful, like a healthy motivation to improve?
That's a fair, nuanced question. And honestly, there can be a healthy version of comparison in small, occasional doses.
Right. Briefly noticing someone else's achievement and feeling inspired, wow, that's impressive, maybe I could try something similar, is very different from constant, heavy comparison that leaves you feeling inadequate.
The difference really comes down to how it makes you feel afterward. Healthy inspiration usually leaves you feeling motivated and hopeful. Unhealthy comparison usually leaves you feeling discouraged, small, or not enough.
So it's less about eliminating comparison completely, which honestly might not even be realistic, and more about noticing which type you're experiencing and gently steering away from the harmful kind.
Anna, going back to your language learning comparison story, what really helped you shift your mindset long-term, beyond that one conversation with your teacher?
Honestly, I started keeping a very simple private journal, just a few lines each week, noting specific things I could do now in the language that I couldn't do a few months earlier.
That's such a concrete, personal way to track your own growth.
Right. And whenever I felt that familiar comparison feeling creeping in, I would look back at those notes and it reminded me very clearly that my own journey was real and meaningful, regardless of anyone else's pace.
I really like that. It's like building your own evidence file of personal progress, something concrete to return to whenever comparison starts to feel loud.
Exactly. And I think that's such a practical, doable habit for anyone, not just language learners. A simple, ongoing record of your own growth in whatever area matters to you.
I compared myself to a friend and felt worse afterward.
I'm learning to focus on my own progress instead of someone else's.
Social media only shows a highlight reel, not someone's full life.
My English today is so much better than it was 6 months ago.
Everyone's journey is different, so comparison isn't always fair.
Let's review a few useful words from today's episode.
First, a highlight reel, meaning a collection of only the best, most exciting moments, not the full, complete picture.
For example, social media is basically a highlight reel of people's lives.
Next, curated, meaning carefully chosen or selected, often to look more impressive or attractive than reality.
For example, that photo looks perfect, but remember, it's a curated moment, not the whole story.
We also used the word inadequate, meaning feeling like you're not good enough or not enough in some way.
For example, comparing myself to others online sometimes made me feel inadequate.
And finally, to chip away at, meaning to slowly, gradually reduce or damage something little by little.
For example, constant comparison can chip away at your confidence over time, even without you fully realizing it.
We talked about why humans naturally compare themselves to others, an old survival instinct now overloaded by social media.
We shared our own stories, Jake's career comparison with a successful friend, and my language learning comparison story.
We talked about why comparison hurts us, especially upward comparison, and how we usually compare our full inside to someone else's edited outside.
We covered common areas where comparison shows up: career, appearance, relationships, parenting, and language learning.
We covered practical strategies, noticing comparison, remembering the highlight reel effect, comparing yourself to your past self, limiting triggers, practicing gratitude, and remembering everyone's journey is different.
We also talked about the difference between healthy inspiration and unhealthy comparison, and I shared how a simple progress journal helped me personally.
If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what's one small way you'll try to reduce comparison in your own life this week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.